Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and this is how to make a survival horror in Unity, and welcome to episode 6. So this episode we're going to cover quite a few things and I'm hoping it doesn't drag on too long. So we're going to look at some sound effects, specifically a noise for our door when we open it. We'll look at compiling a script to open our door on command, and we'll be doing that using something called Raycast. So first things first, what we need to do is set up a key on our keyboard as an action key, which is going to be the E key. So edit. And down here, we have project settings and input. So we need to go on here and in the inspector panel, click on the arrow next to axis. And whatever the size is here, we need to set one more. So the size is reference to all these possible options that we have here. So let's change this to 19. If yours is set to, for example, 21, set it as 22 and then hit enter. If yours is like mine, 18, set it to 19 and hit enter, and it will duplicate whatever the last one in the list is. In this case, it's cancel. So we click the arrow next to that second cancel there. Let's change the name to action. What we need to do is change the positive button, and only this positive button right now. So at the moment it's set to escape because that would be cancel, but we want to set it to the letter E. Doesn't matter if it's in caps or not, I just have it as lowercase, still works just fine. So we've set our key. So what we want to do now is set the Raycast, so as when we press the E key, we open this door. So let's start creating this script, and I'll explain Raycast a little more as we go along. So in our scripts folder, right click, create, and let's do a C# script. And we'll call this player casting. And let's open it up in Visual Studio or MonoDevelop. And this is a fairly simple script, but it's the process of it is very handy for us later on. So let's get rid of any notes and void start. We don't need that. And we're going to need to define two variables. The first variable needs to be static. So if we look at our previous script for flame animation, we haven't used static. We've used the word public, but we haven't used static. The reason we use static is because we need other scripts that we create later on to be able to reference this script. So if we have something as public static, it means that wherever we set this variable name as can be referenced in other scripts. But we'll do that as we go further along in this tutorial anyway, because we'll need to reference it when we make the script to open the door. So it's going to be a float, and a float is basically a decimal number. It's not a whole number. If we look at flame animation, we had int, which is integer, which is the whole number, but player casting can be a decimal number because it's much more precise than just 1, 2, 3. And this will be distance from target. And now maybe you're thinking you know what Raycast is because we've used the words distance from target. So Raycast is a way of, think of shooting an imaginary beam out from your player to whatever object it hits, and then it returns the value of how far away that object is. So if something is quite far away, it could return a value of, let's say, 42.618. If the object is very close, it could return a value of 2.1064. So that's how it works. It basically returns a value of how far away whatever you're looking at is. So the second one, we're going to have public. This one isn't static, but it's still a float. And we're going to have to target, semicolon. And I'll explain this as we go further through and create the Raycast. So within void update, we need to create a further variable. But this one doesn't need to be public or anything like that. It can just be the type and then the name. So in this case, the type that we're going to use is called Raycast hit. And the name we're going to use, we'll just call it hit. So semicolon. Next, what we need to do is create an if statement to say, basically, it's always going to return true because we're saying the physics of the Raycast, we need to return the value of how far it is. And we do that by doing if, and in brackets, physics, and that is a capital P, because remember, whenever coding in Unity, it's always case sensitive. Dot Raycast, and then in brackets what we need to do is put transform dot position, comma. So that's basically the position of what we're doing essentially. Next is transform. You'll notice here at this point the transform we're using is lowercase, same with the position there. So we also need to transform the direction. So in other words, which way we're facing, which is going to be forward. So we need to do transform dot transform direction, and that is a capital T, capital D. And in brackets, we need to use something called vector 3. So you can think of vector 3 as a way of defining a 3D world. So you can have all different directions, whereas something like perhaps vector 2 would only be in the 2D world. So obviously we're doing 3D, so it's going to be vector 3. And it's dot forward because we want it to always be forward. We don't want it going sideways even though we're walking forward. It has to be forward to see how far we are. And then close bracket, comma, and then we need to output this to the variable that we've stated here, which is hit. So out hit, close bracket, and close bracket to close the if, and then open curly bracket. So basically, we're saying once we've fired this raycast, we need to then set the target, which is going to be the internal version of this, and we need to set the distance from target. So we'll explain why we have two variables which are basically the same thing. We need to do to target equals hit dot distance semicolon. So what we're saying here is the variable we have as toTarget is going to be equal to whatever our output is in our raycast. So the distance is going to go to toTarget. And then we need to make distance from target equals to target semicolon. Then close curly bracket. And this close curly bracket will close the update. And this one will close the entire class. So we can now save that script and head back to Unity. So the reason we have those two variables will be obvious, hopefully, now as we add this to our player. So what we need to do is on our FPS controller, let's double click, and currently we are looking this way. So let's attach our player casting onto the FPS controller. And then if we go down, we should be able to see that even though we've declared two variables, we only see one here, which is toTarget. So what I like to do generally is be able to see what my variables are within the inspector panel. Because this is static here, we don't actually get to see that in the inspector panel. Kind of think of it as a way of hiding it. So I like to have this second one, which is going to be the exact same value anyway, to see what it is in here. So if we press play now, we should hopefully see toTarget change, and we can. So that toTarget at the bottom is telling us how far away we are from things. So if we walk towards this wall now, that variable down there should decrease. And you can see that because we're that close to the wall, it's a very small number. So what we intend to do is, as we get to this door here, we want to be able to open it using that player casting script. And toTarget is set as that, so you can always assume that the distance from target is going to be exactly the same as well. So let's move on and let's create some UI. Now UI, commonly known as GUI or HUD, it's referred to in different ways. So it's basically text and imagery that you see on top of the screen. And we've done that before in Canvas because we've already got them set up. We need these to be able to display when we're close enough to the door. So if we were close to this door, for example, we would want the E key and the text to display to us. And that is what we need to code into the script that we attach to the door. So what we're going to do is we need to create a brand new script here. So right click, create C# script, and we'll call this door cell open. And before we go any further, what I think we should do is on the door itself, let's untick animation because we don't really need that at the moment because we only want it to play at a certain point. So let's open that door cell open script in Visual Studio, Mono Develop, whichever. And what we'll do is we'll get rid of the notes and void start again because we don't need them. What we do need to do is at the very top, we need to put using Unity engine .ui. So the reason we put this is because we need this script to recognize that we are using some UI elements of objects within the script. So let's get to this. The script is going to be, I'd say, longer than the others that we've done, but it's kind of fun along the way because you'll see exactly how the mechanics of scripting works in real time. So firstly, we need to set the distance from how far we are from the door, which is the one where we'll reference the player casting script. So we'll do public float, and we'll just call it the distance. Now it has to be a float because we need to reference this script, the player casting, which is also float. So they need to be the same type. Now, the next couple of objects are going to be game objects, much in the same way we did with the flame animation and referred to the flame light as a game object. So, the first one, public game object, we're going to have called action display. So that will be our E key that we have displayed as UI. Next one, public game object, and this one we'll call action text semicolon. So this will be our text that we say underneath, which says open the door. The next one is going to be the door itself. So public game object the door semicolon. Next, what else are we going to need? I don't think we need too many more. That should probably do it, to be honest. Oh, of course, we're going to add in some audio, aren't we? So let's set some audio in there. So public audio source, and we'll call it Creek Sound semicolon. So this one here, audio source, even though it's going to be a game object technically, we need to reference the specific component of audio within that game object. So to do that, what we'll do is we will go back to Unity and we'll bring in a creaking sound to add to our first person controller because we need the audio sound to be right next to us. So in the assets folder, let's right click, create folder, let's have audio. Within this folder again, let's create a new folder and call it effects. And then I'm going to drag and drop this creaky door sound into Unity. And you can get this on the website for free. Head over there, downloads and assets, survival horror, you can download it there. Same with the scripts. If you have any problems with the scripts, you can get them there for free as well. So what we'll do is we'll go to FPS controller up here, and we will right click and create empty. And if we double click, we should be able to see that this game object itself is actually in the middle of the controller, which is perfectly fine. So let's right click, rename, let's call it effects. And then within there, let's create another game object. So this is all parented, as you can see. So it's connected here. So if we move this object anywhere, anything beneath it will move as well. But right click, rename, let's call it Creek Sound. And then drag and drop that audio onto that object there. And then make sure we untick play on awake. But we'll just test this works first. Perfect. So the sound works, so let's make sure we untick play on awake. Now what we need to do is in void update, we need to be able to make the distance, the variable here, equal to the player casting script that we wrote. Or we could do that by going the distance is equal to player casting, which you remember is the name of the other script, dot, and then we reference the variable within that script, in this case, distance from target, semicolon. So that's all we need in the void update. It's not too difficult. The next part we need to do on mouse over. So on mouse over is whenever the mouse passes over the object that this script will be attached to. So obviously we have the inverse of that as well, which is on mouse exit, but that one is a very simple one. It's this bit that's a little bit complicated bit. So void on mouse over, open close bracket, open curly bracket. And the first thing we need to do here is we need to check if the distance is an acceptable distance, because we don't want to be stood all the way over here and then we just look at the door and the action key displays. We need to be able to be fairly close to the door, and we can do that by making sure the distance is below or equal to, let's say, 3. So if the distance is less than or equal to 3, close bracket, open curly bracket, then what we need to do is display those 2 action keys. So we need the E key displayed and the text beneath it displayed as well. So action display dot set active true semicolon, and then action text dot set active true as well. So once we've done that, we can then set another variable, which will, sorry, not a variable, another if statement, which will allow us to control whether we are pressing the action key on this door or not. So to do that, we just need to close that if statement and start a new one. So if input, that's a capital I, dot get button down, and in brackets and quotes, we need to put whatever we set the action button as before, which was the E key. First thing we did in this tutorial, and I called it action. So quote again, close bracket and close bracket. So we close that if statement and then open curly bracket. And within there, let's do a nested if function. Now, a nested if function is another way of checking if something else is true. We could do and up here, but we'll get onto that in probably next episode, to be honest. But there's different ways that you can create if statements. So this is just one of the ways. So if the distance is less than or equal to 3, again, so obviously if you want to be further away from the door, you would have that number higher. If you want to be right up to that door, you would have a lower number. But I'm just doing 3 now as a generic number. Then open curly bracket. So what we're saying here in this if function is, if we're pressing the action button and then if we're less than 3 to the door, then what we need to do is disable the box collider first and foremost. Now the box collider on the door itself, which is going to be, I think this one, isn't it? Yes. So this itself needs to be disabled, because what's going to happen is if we don't disable this box collider, it will essentially make the door itself able to completely just keep reopening, opening. So what I think we may do is put a separate collider around this object, but keep it active. I'll explain what I mean by that as we go along, because it might not be a wise idea to actually attach the script directly to the door. So what we'll do is this, because this always refers to the object that this script is attached to, dot get component. So obviously the component within the inspector panel, and then in spiky brackets the name of the component. So in this case, box collider. And basically all we do is open close bracket and set it as enabled is false. So enabled equals false, semicolon. So next thing we need to do is turn off these action display settings, because we've already opened the door. We don't need it to tell us that we still need to open it. So action display dot set active false, semicolon. Same again, action text dot set active is false, semicolon. So you can see what's happening here is it's like a routine that the script is going to go kind of scroll through and do each line by line, one after the other, but it'll do all this in the same, pretty much almost the same frame. But it is just a case of setting a routine for the script to run through. So next thing we need to do is play the animation component within the door so it opens. So the door dot get component again, and in spiky brackets it's called animation, because remember we took away the animator component and changed it with animation. And then open close bracket dot play, and then in brackets and quotes we put the name of that animation. So let's double check. It's called first door open anim. It has to be exactly the same. So first door open anim, quote again, close bracket, semicolon, and then let's have creeksound.play. Creeksound.play. Open close bracket. And it's as simple as that. So let's close that if statement and then close the original if statement, and then we can close void on mouse over. So as I said, the inverse of that would be on mouse exit. So when we're not looking at the door, we need to make sure that we turn off the action display and action text. So void on mouse exit, open close bracket, open curly bracket. We can just use these two lines of code here. So we can just copy them, paste them here, go down and close that and save the script. So then this final curly bracket will close the entire public class. So let's head back to Unity. I think I missed a semicolon somewhere. Yes, I have at the end of creeksound.play. So I missed the semicolon there. That's the handy thing about the console is if you make a mistake in the script, it'll always tell you here where you've made the mistake. So we have that script all set. Now we need to attach it to the door and set everything up in a fun way. So game object, and let's go to 3D object and cube, and we'll use this as, think of it as our trigger object. So if we move it into position over here, right by the door, and we'll make it big enough to actually cover the door area. So let's shrink it on the Z, I think we should do first. Maybe let's put it as 0.3. Bring it to about here. Let's increase the size on the Y so it kind of covers the entire door. And then same again with the X. And then let's turn off mesh renderer so we can't actually see that object at all. And then let's attach this cube to the door here. Right click, rename, and we'll call this door trigger. So now let's drag and drop this door cell open script onto door trigger and set these variables. So action key is on action display. Action text is action text again. The door is the door, and then creak sound is going to be the creak sound we imported. So fingers crossed, guys, we should see this distance change pretty much as soon as we start, so we can see how far away we are. So let's go up to our door, and we can see it's quite so I think we're going to need to reduce that a little bit. We can see we're quite far away from the door, and it still displays. So let's set that as maybe 2 and save. And let's try this again. So let's head to our door and let's open it up. So let's head forward, open door. Okay, so it didn't play. Of course, I know why. Because I do believe on the door itself, we set the animation component as off. And we need to untick play automatically. So just make sure you do have that animation component on and it isn't ticked to play automatically. And one more time. There we go. And now we can go through. So if I press escape to get the cursor on and I go to the scene view whilst keeping the game still running, you can see the game is still running, but we are in scene view. If we go to this door trigger, you'll see that the box collider is now off. This is what makes us able to pass through the door, because if we try and pass through the door without it actually doing, you still can't pass through it. You can see the box collider turns off as soon as we press the E key. And that is how we make a door open on command. So that player casting script is going to be something that we use quite a lot, because we need to use it to perhaps pick things up, to change things in the game. It'll be, it's one of the most essential things, I would say, to making a game. So next episode, what we'll do is we'll add in the crosshair. We'll put in perhaps an objective to start the game on, piece together a story, and then from there, possibly the episode after, we'll start looking at picking up a weapon, and we'll start looking at enemies and jump scares, and it's all going to start rolling and coming together from here on in. So guys, until that next episode, thank you very much for watching.